Welcome to A State of Mind, the podcast dedicated to our collective awakening, healing, growth, transformation, and the embodied expression of this conscious experience we call life. My name is Julian Royce, and I'm recording this here in my office in downtown Boulder, Colorado, where I work as a psychedelic-assisted therapist, coach. I also teach meditation. I work with couples, and I do a lot with trauma work, helping people heal and recover from trauma. You can learn more about my offerings at astateofmindcounseling.org and check out the links in the show notes below to learn more about me and my guests on this podcast. And if you'd like to work with me directly, you can send me a message through my website, and I'm also offering a new group, which is called an integration group. And this group will be online. There'll be an online community you can join. And integration is something that I am really passionate about. I think it is a concept or even a meta concept that ties together all of our processes of healing, growth, and awakening. And some people think of integration as a part of psychedelic work. And the way that I see it is that any psychedelic altered states experience, meditation, coaching, anything that we're doing to develop and grow is a part of the bigger process called integration. And that this integration process is really about becoming whole, waking up, growing up, showing up, and becoming fully you. So if you'd like to join this group and receive the support of the group, we're going to be meeting every other Wednesday, and I'm going to have an open kind of rolling enrollment. We will be starting on November 20th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So please send me a message, astateofmindcounsel@gmail.com, or check out my website. You can message me there as well. For today's conversation, I'm speaking with my friend Virginia Salas Kastilio. Virginia is a very inspiring speaker and presence and person who's doing a lot in the world. As we discussed in this episode, she's one of the most well-traveled people I know, very nomadic, traveling around the world. And this has given her a unique perspective of being a citizen of the whole world rather than of a particular nation. And I think there's something really beautiful and inspiring about that. And we first met at Burning Man in 2022. And we share that story here of how we met and what that was like. And it's a bit spicy. It feels edgy for me to share this on the podcast, but I wanted to share it because it's a beautiful story and it was a good experience, and we've been good friends ever since then. So I think I'm going to start off this episode with us talking about that story, and then we'll go into the main part of our conversation after that. Virginia is the creator of a community called Humans I Trust, and her new organization is called Love Earth, and she shares about that and so much more on this episode. So without further ado, I bring you Virginia Salas Kastilio.
The funny thing is, I just noticed, I think you're the first podcast host that's interviewed me that I've had sex with.
Hey, I feel honored.
So, yay us. And yeah, I mean, just so amazing, so hilarious. I wanted to write an article about this. We talked about this at Burning Man, but we can share it here now. Just our amazing story of how we met at Burning Man, and how we shared our exodus together, because that's legendary. And I think my title for the article was something like, it was something like the best. When you won Burning Man. I think that was what I said about this. When you won Burning Man. Yeah. And I feel like we won Burning Man. Hey. Well done. And
riding off in the sunset together.
Exactly.
That's so good.
So, do you want to share anything about that story of like?
I remember meeting you at the beginning of Burning Man, beginning of the week, and there was we were in this camp called Camp Mystic, which has a lot of amazing people and artists, and there was some kind of getting to know each other exercises and opening ceremony, and we connected and talked, and you were friends with my friend Kingsley, who's also a guest on the podcast, and had a great conversation with him. And then I didn't really see that much during the week, which tends to happen at a space like Burning Man. And then I needed to get a ride out of there, and somehow we connected, and you were able to offer me a ride in an RV that was leaving at the right time. And I showed up, I think it was 6 a.m. I was there on time with my backpack, ready to go. And we got in the RV together, and your friend was driving it. And the ride out of Burning Man can take a long time, It can be a long wait in the line, and so we got to know each other. But it felt super sweet and connected, and we had that night in Las Vegas together with some friends, and it was such a sweet way to end in that connection and love that we were talking about. And it's beautiful that we've stayed in touch all this time.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and just to share the story from my perspective, I met Julian at Camp Mystic at the beginning, and we just saw each other for like little moments and touch points throughout Burning Man. And this was my first Burning Man 2022. And, you know, you hear about Burning Man, all the sexcapades and the fun and the orgy dome and different things. And so I was single, and I was completely planning to have a very promiscuous, sensual Burning Man. And I went the entire time without kissing anyone, without sleeping with anyone, anything like that. There was no vibe. There was no interest that I had in anyone. And then you asked for the ride, back to Reno in our RV.
Right.
And then he said, you got the ride. And we all got the ride. And so yeah, it was interesting because then when you came, we started like flirting, and just like there was like a vibe and there was an energy, and someone was sleeping in the back and Lucian was driving, and it just, one thing led to the other, and suddenly we're making love in my little Burning Man, pull out sofa bed. And it was actually one of the best lovemaking sessions I'd had, particularly for just having met someone in this moment, right? Where you're, it was like, it was really beautiful, really connected, such a highlight. And what an amazing way to spend the Exodus, which is like hours being in traffic, like leaving Burning Man, which is making love with this man here, and just sending it off with fireworks.
I love hearing that. I didn't realize you hadn't, kissed anyone else or had any thing like that the whole week. That's beautiful. I think sometimes there's a connection, and I love the word attunement, and to be in that energy and that flow, and like actually be in a space like zero expectation, zero goal or plan around that thing, and just like that natural unfolding. It's so beautiful to me and so precious. And I think part of what is coming up for me when you share that was, no expectation, but just being open and connected, and like seeing what we both really wanted in that moment and honoring that.
And communicating clearly.
And
like at least from my side, we can do like a little like follow-up conversation, right? Because for some people it's very traumatic to share intimacy and love and energy, and then not to go on to dating, not to go on to sharing a relationship, coming back as friends and just being like, this just makes me love you more. I know you more now, right? And so at least for me, it's felt very clearly communicated. There was never anything that came up or where I felt unworthiness or disrespected or anything like that. How was it for you? Did you feel clear? Was there anything?
Yeah, I loved our communication, and I loved staying in touch afterwards. And it's a good point. I mean, people can... Some of the things that, it doesn't have to... I think if you're clear from the beginning, because part of what you're speaking to are expectations. And I think it doesn't... We actually can evolve or develop to the point where we can become more conscious about the meaning that we give something. And sharing a kiss with someone could just be a moment of sensual connection where you appreciate each other in that moment, and then you don't see each other or don't have more of a relationship, and that can be beautiful. Or it could mean that you're developing a relationship together, and that can be beautiful. But to make that process conscious and not have an assumption or expectation, I think that's an important part of like rewriting our cultural codes. Because part of what people get into trouble with is like, the meaning that you're giving something, and you can make that conscious and have a choice there. But I love that memory of riding off from the desert after that long week of not much sleep and all the chaos and all the beauty and also challenges. And I mean, I was there pretty much sharing an RV with some of my best friends, but we were all men and we had our ups and downs. It felt like such a beautiful... Another thing is like when you end an experience on a good note, it can then change the whole way you see the whole experience, So it helped me to like feel really good and positive leaving, and feel good about, just like see it all in a more positive light, if that makes sense.
I love that. And you helped me fulfill my intention, which was to have a super sexy Burning Man. So it was like the sexy happened at the last minute, but it's just like, it was like the cosmic joke of the way that the universe works. It's like, here you have, my expectation was, right? So I did have an expectation of a sexy Burning Man. And then the way that the universe played it was like, okay, we're going to give you this card last minute, we're going to play you this like ace of spades here on the table. And yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. It's definitely just like such a fond memory, and we won Burning Man, so well done.
Hey, good job. Love it.
Okay, perfect. I really wanted to tell that story just to end it.
So I'm here today with Virginia Salas Kastilio. Virginia, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it feels really special to have you here, and yeah, I can feel your presence. Feels good. It's good to drop in with you. And just to share with everyone listening, we met at Burning Man in 2022 at Camp Mystic, which was a beautiful experience. And then I got to give a talk at the Humans I Trust camp at Envision Festival the next year, which was also really sweet. And you created this community called Humans I Trust. And I will occasionally see someone wearing that shirt at an event or a concert or a gathering and know that they probably have a connection with you. And that's a really sweet thing. But yeah, how would you want to introduce yourself and share with people about the community you've created? And
yeah, happy to introduce myself. Hello, everyone. I'm Virginia Salas Kastilio. I'm a multidimensional businesswoman here to uplift consciousness, uplift our economy, communication, collaboration. I work across every single vertical you could possibly imagine, and I'm here in service to humanity, in service to the earth, and to joy and love.
Beautiful. Yeah, and obviously I have a passion for bringing people together, creating community, which has also been a big passion of mine. And yeah. And now you are working with something called Love Earth. So the Humans I Trust is kind of now a part of Love Earth. Do you want to introduce that or speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So Eckhart Tolle has coined this term, New Earth. And it's, we as the collective conscious community have been coming together and talking about building New Earth for a while now. But what is New Earth? What is the new thing about it? And so after being a steward of trust for the past 8 years, the next assignment that I've received is love. So the new earth is Love Earth. So we find and devote ourselves to is an earth that is here vibrating at the frequency of love, where we're taking decisions from love, where we're leading from love, we are co-creating from love. So that's what Love Earth is really creating an ecosystem and an economy where everyone is winning together. So yeah, that's Love Earth.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love this idea of everyone winning together. And yeah, in our world today, it's often competitive and a sense of trying to get ahead, which sometimes looks like tearing someone down or feeling that if someone else is succeeding, that might be taken away from your success or your money or whatever it is you're trying to do. And I see that in the therapy space, which is disturbing because this idea of therapy, healing, people coming, doing this work for healing. And I think a lot of people do. And I also just see this tendency, a lot of people start getting into the healing arts or maybe music or whatever it is with really beautiful intentions and coming from their heart. And then as you engage with this capitalist society, there's just this tendency to become jaded, to become cynical. I've seen this in myself a bit, and to become more fixated on money and to lose touch with that original inspiration. And yeah, but there's a lot to say around trust, and I work with a lot of people. Part of healing trauma is restoring trust in other people, restoring trust in yourself, restoring trust in the world. And part of the definition of PTSD or CPTSD, traumatic, stress that's built up in our system is a lack of trust. Because something traumatic, something difficult, something overwhelming, something essentially terrible happened, so it makes sense there would be a loss of trust. But the healing process is to recover that trust from a place of integrity with yourself. And what I talk about is intelligent trust, right? Trust needs to be earned. And there are some situations that can be dangerous or aren't worth trusting, or some people, perhaps at some times, but to have this bigger trust in your life journey, right? If you can tune into, and that's what I think a lot of spirituality helps with, tune into something bigger that you can trust, that even though difficult things happen, in the long run or ultimately you're connected with this deeper goodness. and to be able to trust that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that humans I trust, it's actually something I've thought about quite a bit after meeting you, and it's obviously an important part of any community and any relationship. Yeah. How have you found, like, I'm curious, like, how you've created trust or how you've cultivated that in your community and what that means to you?
Mm. Hmm. I would say the first ingredient to trust is willingness and having an openness to, you're talking about trauma and different things, how we are imprinted with these experiences and moments of distrust that is just passed on, from one trauma to the other.
Mm.
And the first step is having that willingness to see a different perspective and to trust again and to allow ourselves to experience a different outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the first piece, is the willingness. The second piece is the communication and the vulnerability. So in sharing together, hey, this is where I've been hurt. What's coming up for me right now in connection with you is this memory or this pain or this trauma. And so it's when we communicate and we verbalize and we create shared reality within vulnerability, it opens up. It opens up the space in order to deepen and to trust. And what I've also found with trust is it gets built over time.
Mm.
There's the story of the fox and the little prince,
Mm.
in the book The Little Prince, where the fox says, well, if you want to become my friend, then you have to tame me. And the little prince says, how do I tame you? And the fox says, well, first by showing up every day at the same time.
Mm.
Because if you show up at the same time, I'm already going to be able to get excited an hour before because I know that you're coming.
Yeah.
And then my heart can really open and it can trust you. And then the little prince said, but I'm going to leave one day. And so I'm going to have to leave you because I can't stay here on your planet. And the fox says, that's okay, because our love will live in my heart. And every time that I see, the wheat means nothing to me because I don't eat wheat, but it'll remind me of the color of your hair. And so forever, my life will have been transformed because you've tamed me.
Mm.
And so I think it's a really great story for the building of trust and the taming of each other. And that once you find that love and you find that connection and that deepening, where even if trust is broken, you can come back to that infrastructure and that foundation to rest within it. And, they talk about moving at the speed of trust, because when everyone trusts each other, things are just moving very, very rapidly, because you can pass the ball and the other person will catch it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, to summarize that, the willingness, communication, vulnerability, and the continuing showing up, the examples after some time of, this is what I say I'm going to do, and then this is what I've done. This is what I say I'm going to do, this is what I've done. And if I'm not going to do it, I'm going to update those agreements.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, vulnerability is a key part of that, and then some process or some way to repair, right? Because sometimes, or even if only one person thinks that the trust has been broken, in some way to attend to that, have some time to that, and have some process of repair, and a willingness to do that. And that can be, like, sometimes that's easier to say than to do, and so many communities and friendships and relationships obviously are getting fractured and not repaired. So yeah. That's beautiful. I love that story of the Little Prince. My grandmother gave me that book when I was a little kid. My grandmother was born in Germany, escaped the Nazis in 1938 with her family, and then became fluent in French, and was a French teacher. And so that book had a special place in her heart. And
Makes sense.
Yeah, I remember her reading it to me in French, and then we had the English one. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, and I appreciate it. Before we started recording, you were sharing about trust being more complex, more difficult actually than love. Love is a more simple. I love the way you were speaking to that. Do you want to speak to that for a moment?
Sure, yeah. I mean, if we think about David R. Hawkins for a moment and the scale of consciousness, from 0 being death, 1,000 being full consciousness, enlightenment, living in heaven on earth. Trust is actually in the 4th dimension. So it is still this, there needs to be an action in order to create it, right? And so trust is still within that vibration of, as long as you're showing up and as long as you're showing me that I can trust you, then I know that I can trust you. And it's valuable, especially when interfacing with the 3rd dimension, because it comes from a space of elevation. It's elevating the field by being there. So trust is amplifying. But if you come into a vibration of around 500, 540, you're coming into love. And so love is a 5th dimensional frequency, and love is outside of space and time. It's just immediate. Synchronicities, magic, done, 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 done. Love is like, it's done. And so that's why it's more simple, because it's just like, it's like you can love someone, but that doesn't mean that you trust them, and you can love them completely. And maybe in that moment, because you love them, just trust isn't necessary, because it's beyond that. Because when you truly love, and I'm talking about the real love here, like not the crush infatuation, but the true unconditional love, you're all in, you're fully leaned in. It's like, it doesn't matter what you do, like with your children, they can break the lamp, they can shred up your only manual and copy of your book or whatever it is. And they can mess up over and over again, but that love is still there, because once you love someone, then all of the other things in the 4th dimensional and the 3rd dimensional frequencies of what's happening just melt away, because that's what you're focused on true, infinite, unconditional love. So that's why love is a lot more simple, but trust is very important to learn within the society, because we are communicating mainly in the 3rd dimension with people when we're interfacing in the world. And so, yeah, I hope that made sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. I really appreciate that point that you can love someone without trusting them necessarily. And that feels so important, and that you could ground yourself in love. That could be your kind of ground of your being and come from that. And in a sense, could be unconditional, right?
Yes.
You could commit to that. You could come from that.
Yeah. Well, love is unconditional. Trust isn't unconditional.
Right.
Right? Because if someone breaks your trust over and over and over and over and over and over again, then eventually you're like, well, now I can't trust you anymore. But the whole, I need to trust you and I can't trust you and you hurt me once and now I can't trust you, that's just keeping you in a much lower vibration in like the 2nd and 3rd dimension. And if we actually try to hold ourselves onto that too much, it can be very disconnecting, actually, quite frankly, quite boring as well. It's like very boring. And so it was interesting for me of leading this community around trust for such a long time and experiencing the trauma that people have around trust, because there was a lot of like but can I trust you? Are you a cult leader? It's just like, we have shirts that say I trust you on them. We're creating events for mass transformation, for planting trees, for supporting people, and it's just like, because there was such pain and hurt, then there would be a lot of projections. So it feels quite exciting to be now starting a community around love, because we're shifting our focus. We're not trying to pin everyone down and look at everyone's history and what did you do when and how did you react here, but we're noticing, is someone coming from a vibration of love? And when someone actually is coming from a vibration of love, trust isn't that necessary, because if you're coming from love, you would never willingly or knowingly try to hurt anyone in your field, right? And if you do accidentally step across someone's boundary or make a decision that ends up hurting people, right? Because it's not always up to us, right? Let's say I loved and trusted someone, they hurt the other people, but my intention was only coming from love. So whose fault is it then? Is it my fault? I was coming from love. I made a wrong decision, and so allowing ourselves to be in that frequency of compassion and care and forgiveness, and knowing that if negative energy does come into the field of love somehow, it wasn't on purpose. It wasn't, done with malice, and we can clear it pretty quickly. When you're in a community that's in a vibration of love, anything that comes up that's not love gets alchemized very quickly and brought into connection.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's so important. Yeah, we're touching on some really big themes here. And unfortunately, if you, name something like humans I trust, it kind of puts a target on that or brings that up for people, which is a good thing if we can work with it.
Totally.
You're talking about like Eckhart Tolle's New Earth, transformational gatherings. There's this, and I don't always necessarily I don't always wish the world was this way, but the reality I have to face is like 2024, we are in a place of creating new culture, and we need that. And the old traditions, as much as we may love them, we're just in this massive change, right? And so we're needing to create new cultures, new ways of coming together. And I think, and I hope, tuning into love, for example, these bigger values that can be our bedrock, our ground, our foundation. And then we can see different practices or gatherings or ways of coming together as serving that or as being, expressions of that, hopefully, rather than getting caught up in the weeds. We can be in touch with that bigger picture. But I see our world today as, our whole world, our whole human world is built on trust, and deeper than that, like you're speaking to, love, I think. And unfortunately, our American society or the global society, we're more connected than ever, and yet we're seeing this fracturing. And to me, it's almost like I have this kind of image or metaphor, maybe it's even more than a metaphor, of a mirror that's been cracked and shattering, and different people living in different bubbles and worlds. And I don't know if you saw the movie Civil War. It's like a very dark film. It's about a very dark place our country could go to if there is this continued lack of trust and people turning against each other and then fighting against each other and losing touch with these things that actually have brought us together. But even something like money, whether you like it or not, it's 100% built on trust or faith. At the end of the day, it's just a piece of paper or a digit on a computer screen. But because we all believe in it, and belief is another way to say trust, it works. It has a lot of power. So I'm kind of like zooming out to like bigger picture stuff, but I think it's important to try to bring people together and to create these transformational gatherings. I think that's part of why we connected and part of why we've been doing some of the things we're doing. And there's this movement that gives me hope that I'm excited about, where we could create a world where we're all winning.
Yeah, you brought up a really important point, which everyone talks about, and we get to double click on this and dissect this a little bit, which is the old versus new. What does that mean, right? Old for who, new for who? Old versus new, currently where we are in 2024, doesn't actually give us a clear direction and map, especially when we're talking about globally, right? Because something that might be new for women in Saudi Arabia is sitting here in a podcast interview and being dressed the way that I'm dressed, right? For a woman in America, that's old. That's a long time ago. So the way that I'm looking at the world right now is vibrationally. This is why also this term New Earth, I feel like, is no longer new and is no longer relevant for us, because this is, I think this concept is over 20 years old now already, So we are here currently in the newest vibration and the newest incarnation of humanity. And what does that mean? How can we accurately create a map? And so I think that the only map that there really is, especially when talking about these civil wars and these transformation and what's happening, is fear and love.
Yeah.
That's it. Are we coming from fear or are we coming from love? Is this country, is this government coming from fear, is coming from love? Is this legislation, is the healthcare system, is it coming from fear, is it coming from love? I think these are always like very simple things that we could look at in anything, and we can make those decisions. And so looking at David R. Hawkins' map of consciousness, which is really the only map that we need, to truly solve all of these problems and to orient, is we can look at everything that we're doing and we can say, are we coming from fear? Are we coming from love? Are we coming from fear? Are we coming from love? And fear has many different faces. It can be shame. It can be judgment. It can be these different things, jealousy, envy, etc. And love can have many different faces, which is peace, joy, harmony, unity, etc. And so that's how I've put on a new lens of the world, where before, I have to admit, as an entrepreneur, I really cared about these status things of what I was conditioned and told to care about. What makes me important? What makes me relevant? How many followers do I have? How much money am I making on a monthly basis? How much money have I made other people? And all these other kinds of things. And so I would measure myself on that because that's what I was told gives me value in our society. Now I found the true measurement of my success is how happy and peaceful do I feel on a daily basis. That's the first thing. I also measure my success by how much time do I get to spend naked in nature. That for me is the ultimate happiness and freedom.
Oh, wow.
How much time do I get to spend naked in nature? And so that for me are my measures of success. And then in terms of my impact and what am I doing as a global communal being in this world, I ask myself, how many people am I making happy? How many people am I freeing from their traumas, from their conditioning that's running their lives, that is stopping them from actually reaching their highest form of abundance, which is infinite? We're not millionaires, we're not billionaires, and this is something that we teach within Love Earth, is how do I live my life with an infinite wealth frequency? In understanding that I have infinite bank accounts. It's not just my Wise, my crypto.com, my Coinbase, my Bank of America or whatever it may be. It is the infinite bank accounts that I have access to in every single moment by tapping and tuning into the different timelines and options that I get to choose in how I be and how I interact. And those bank accounts can be joy and your health and your connection to your family and your connection to your partner and all these other different types of things. And if you take all of that into account, where are you then? And that is your true actual indicator of success, joy, happiness, well-being, fulfillment in this world. So yeah, that's really fun for me.
Yeah, I loved hearing that. That's beautiful. Really expands our scope of how we can define success, which I think is super important. To have that not be so limited or narrow focus. But I love what you said about being naked in nature. I'm actually planning to go camping this weekend, so maybe I'll try to incorporate that.
Please do. Yes. Yes.
I've definitely been exploring over the last year in particular, like getting more sun in my body, and like how beautiful that is. And there's talking about fear and love. I was actually given quite a bit of fear around sunlight. So my dad had skin cancer for a period of time. He got better, but that message of sunscreen, and of course we don't want to overdo it, but I think there's something pretty deep and profound and kind of disturbing about being afraid of sunlight that our society has gotten that message, right? Which is the sun being one of the most, maybe the most fundamental source of life, really. Yeah. Well, I wonder if it would be fun to share a little bit about, how we met and your journey. And I mean, it seems like you're like such a global traveler. I mean, you speak about, like, of all the people I know, like, you really do seem like a citizen of the globe rather than of a particular country. I don't even know if you have like a residency you put on your tax forms or whatever. Like, I don't even know where you live because you're always traveling, right? Is that fair to say you're moving around the world a lot?
I am definitely one of the original nomads. I was born in Berlin, Germany, and I've been nomadic since I was 3. And so, yeah, I do have multiple addresses across the world. One is in Spain, one is in the UK, one is in Germany, and one is in Bali.
Wow.
And I, own companies all across the world. I have a Hong Kong company, a UK company, an Indonesian company.
Amazing.
I'm on my mother's companies in Spain, own a lot of land there as well. So I'm an international citizen of the world for sure. Which is also why Love Earth, essentially what we're doing, this is why we've created our own currency, Love Coin. The idea is to become a sovereign nation of love. So a decentralized nation, eventually having our own passports, creating our own bank, being completely autonomous within and self-organized. So eventually I'll have a Love Earth passport.
I didn't know that part. So people could become a citizen of this nation that is kind of not a geographical location as much as like a global community. Would that be a way to say it?
Exactly. And so literally when you sign up today on loveearth.love, if you're coming from this podcast, put in the code We Love Julian, and then I'll know that you listen this here. And and so when you sign up, you actually get your Love Citizen ID. We've had over 250 citizens sign up already. And so you would receive your unique Love Citizen ID, which then it also becomes kind of like your PayPal handle, etc. So for people to pay you through Love Wallet. And so so that's already kind of the official way that it works at the moment, which is you become a Love Citizen. So that's already existed now. Just the passports aren't here. So the currency is here, the platform is here, the land is here, the Wi-Fi is here, LoveFi. We even have our own Wi-Fi extranet where each of these acts as a cell tower. And so the more that we have of these, eventually we can just run on our own love network with LoveFi. And what's also amazing about it is that because of the battery that we use in the technology, this is literally created by the Okanagan Indian Confederacy. So this is also supporting and in partnership with the tribes here in America, with a lot of different tribes. And this is also why it's secure, because we're running servers over indigenous land. So it's like a yes on a yes on a yes on a yes, and then it transforms dangerous EMFs into pink light. So not only have we solved like our own network, we have a Wi-Fi that this is like ceremony. This is prayer. This is not like a Comcast or any of these other things. Like this is our own pure, clean Wi-Fi network that if they shut us all down and they shut us all off, we can have solar energy charge these bad boys and we're all good. We're sovereign. So so that's what Love Earth is specializing in, is sovereignty in creating a world and an earth of people that are vibrating at love and above.
Amazing. So let's say the name of the indigenous group that
it says it back here. I'm just going to read it here. So love is made by Okanagan Indian Confederacy and Chen family dynasty for the completion of peace.
It's a beautiful intention. And so this would be a way to connect to a Wi-Fi signal with the community.
Correct. And then you just get the app Love Wi-Fi, and then wherever you are in the world, if you're in Europe, Mexico, Canada, USA, you just get the data package, and it's just valid for 30 days. So you can do it, and there's no contracts, no nothing. You're completely anonymous. We're not taking your data. This is all secure data, and you can utilize it, for 30 days, and then you can keep it in the drawer.
Yeah.
If you don't need it, if you're traveling, it's super easy, uncomplicated. Cool. Yeah.
That's fascinating. That's such an interesting idea. It's like spinning wheels in my mind. But here in Boulder, Colorado, we have Comcast, also called Xfinity. And for better or worse, I'm not saying they don't provide internet, but that's your choice. So I think it's actually speaking to something important. Internet has become so central to our lives. Here we are in the United States of America. It's supposed to be a free market, and yet we find these big, huge companies that effectively have monopolized little areas, and it's effectively a utility. But it's because it's kind of new and it's the internet. It's just, I think things like this feed people's distrust, to go back to that, or their sense of being. If someone doesn't have choice, it tends to not feel like it to them. And
Yeah, you said the magic words. That's the whole point of everything is choice. Because, we're not here being Love Earth saying everyone needs to be happy. Everyone needs to have the highest quality of food and education and community that they deserve. We're not here preaching that from the towers. We're saying this is what we would love. This is how we would like to live our lives.
Mm-hmm.
This is the type of people and community and mindset that we would like to surround ourselves with. And what we desire is to give the good people of the world a choice to choose love. If you want to choose love, well, here's Love-Fi, here's Loveland, here's Love Foods, here's all the things that we've curated for you that are not going to harm you, that are not going to harm your health, that are not going to harm your psyche, your spirituality. Everything that we're doing is with the best, most advanced, most regenerative technology for the world. And so that's what it is. We're giving people the option to choose love and to make that really easy. At the moment, there are hardly options to choose love. You need to look through when I'm in the supermarket, I have to read every single label of ingredients because what they're writing on the packaging is not true. They're saying, oh, sugar free. They're saying this, oh, maybe you didn't put cane sugar in it, but you've put dextrose and all this other kind of stuff. So you're lying to us, So it's like you actually need to, in order to choose love, right now you have to be a detective and you have to learn programs and food programs and all these things which are difficult to actually find if you don't know what you're looking for and if you don't know where the tripwires are. So that's the whole purpose of what we're doing is we've built Love Earth to give humanity the option to choose love.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, it's inspiring and another thing it brings up for me is you mentioned choosing to come from fear or to come from love. And we just kind of mentioned it briefly, but our healthcare system, just health in general, health and wellness, something I'm passionate about, something that a lot of people listening to this are passionate about, and you should be, right? It's one of the most important things that we can care to and attend to, the health of our body and the health of the people we love. And I think the political establishment in this country and unfortunately, the Democratic Party, they're not I don't think they're acknowledging how important that is and how big pharma, big corporations, the industrial food, the things you're speaking to, they're not serving us. And there's so much sickness and obesity and diabetes and ADHD and so many health problems. And I work with people in here and I try to come from a holistic place and check in with them. But yeah, the reality is to really pay attention to your health, well-being, what you're taking in your body. You have to be a detective, and it takes time and energy that a lot of people feel like they don't have. And it takes money too in this society. And so unfortunately I've seen, I don't want to get too into the political weeds, but I've seen people going down maybe more negative political roads because of this issue, because they're not seeing themselves being represented, not seeing people speak to that. And it's another example of feeling like we don't really have choice. Why would something that is simple and organic and actually has less ingredients, why would that cost so much more than something with 100 ingredients that we don't want, but it's way cheaper and much more available and much more common? It just doesn't quite, I'm always like, how is this, where's the logic here? Why is there, and maybe part of it is government subsidies and there's probably a lot of complex reasons, but at the end of the day, it's more and more challenging to take care of their health and work and a job and get the money and do all the things that we have to do. So I just want to advocate for that health and wellness, and to have organizations or companies that we can trust. And and we've seen a lot that maybe we trusted and then that trust was broken.
Absolutely. I mean, we've been conditioned into illness and into disease because it's far more profitable for us to be sick and dependent on all of these drugs. How clever is it to make a product that is non-essential, that is actually damaging to human health, that you need to take every single day? It's like every day, and then when it runs out, you gotta take more. You gotta keep on taking it. So the pharmaceutical industry, I would say, is the most toxic industry in the world, along with the food industry. I would say far worse than the tobacco or the alcohol industry.
Wow.
Because at least with the tobacco and the alcohol industry, there's some kind of education around the fact that these things are bad, right? And that there should be some kind of like extra precaution around it. But the interesting thing is that the most intelligent, the smartest thing the tobacco industry ever did was tell people that tobacco is addictive, when tobacco indeed is not addictive whatsoever. So it's,
That's interesting. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so tobacco is not addictive as a substance. I don't know if you've ever smoked a cigarette before,
I have.
but yeah, and so did you find yourself having cravings or, having a difficult time not smoking?
Yeah, I personally never felt addicted to it, but I know people who, of course, have been.
I'll tell you what people are addicted to. It's not the cigarettes or even the crappy chemicals that they put in Marlboro and all this other kind of stuff. This is what people are addicted to. Imagine you're smoking a cigarette. You have the cigarette in your hand. You're looking cool as you do when you smoke cigarettes, and then you go like this.
Deep breath.
People are addicted to deep breathing. Not, right? Right? It's so obvious. It's like once you see it, you can't unsee it. But they're not addicted to the tobacco. They're not addicted to the chemicals that they add to make it, burn faster so that you smoke more and all this other crap. It's addicted to the deep breathing and to the ceremony, to taking time for yourself and saying, hey, these 8 minutes are for me. I'm going to take this cigarette break, right? We put it into the culture where it was funny because at Apple, they realized that people who would go smoke cigarettes, they could take their 10-minute cigarette break.
Yeah.
People who didn't smoke couldn't take breaks.
Yeah.
And so suddenly, why are the non-smokers being treated unfairly, whether the smokers, because the smokers can say, well, I have an addiction. No, you don't. We all need a break. We all need a reset. We all need a moment of meditation and mindfulness, and that's what the cigarette is. And so Apple started doing these non-cigarette breaks and creating meditation rooms and spaces for people to actually go and take a breather and take a moment to themselves. But coming back to the pharmaceutical and the food industry, the way that they're keeping us so sick is through cognitive dissonance. They're just going to confuse you. On the news, one day peas are poisonous, and then you can't eat vegetables because of the pesticides that they're putting in. And there's always going to be a reason for you not to have something, and they can change it. Oh, but now fat is bad, and now sugar is bad, and all these other kinds of things. So people just get confused, and they're like, I don't even know what to do anymore.
Yeah.
Is this too much for me? I'm just gonna, and then what happens is we actually starve ourselves because currently as a community, we are overfed but undernourished.
Yeah.
And because we have this cognitive dissonance, we try to starve ourselves for the first half of the day. And then we're like, oh, I'm not supposed to eat. I'm gaining weight. I'm too fat, this and this and this. And we're just like, oh my God, oh my God. And then eventually we're just so drained and we're so tired that we don't even have the energy to cook anymore. We don't have the energy to make the vegetables or the salad and all that we found. We just grab a quick fast food snack that you put in the microwave or heat up in the oven or whatever it may be, and then you just eat it, and then again you feel bad about yourself because now you're feeling more sick, and then you're in that vicious cycle every day. And so that is how we are continued to be conditioned into disease. And the way that we break out of disease is by first realizing that we're being poisoned. Because if you don't realize that you're being poisoned, well, then what's wrong? Like, oh, this is healthy for me. This yogurt is healthy for me. Look at it. It says healthy, calcium, all this other kind of stuff. No, this is marketing. No one should be eating milk. Like no one. Milk is made for baby cows. The fact that we are so illusioned that we think that, and if you actually just look at the studies and you see which countries have the highest amount of milk intake versus which countries have the highest amount of osteoporosis, which is bone fracture, right? Which is a sign of low calcium. They line up. They're the same countries.
Oh, really?
They're the same companies. Germany, Sweden, Norway, all the European Nordics, USA, right? But then you look at the countries that don't do dairy, which is like Japan, China, places like this where it's being introduced more, but they're still quite pure in that, have a low number of osteoporosis.
Interesting, yeah.
So there's all these things, and the science is there, but people don't know because you're being sold these gloopy, cheesy, addictive. Cheese is 8 times more addictive than cocaine, just as is sugar, right? So you're being sold these addictive substances because, well, what will get you to eat more food, right? How can I, if I'm a food manufacturer, how do I up my margins? I get you to eat more. How do I get you to eat more? I give you low nutritional food that's addictive that makes you want to eat more.
Wow.
So
yeah, there's a lot there.
I'm like obsessed with this topic. I can talk a lot about this. I've actually become quite the like nutrition and health expert across the past 8 years. I don't talk about it a lot because it gets people very triggered.
Sure.
Because they've been so deeply conditioned into the delusion that it's just like, no, what do you mean? You're not going to take my sugar and my dairy away. I'm addicted to this, you know? So it's just like, that is actually physically addictive. That's the funny part. It's like the FDA allows you to give out addictive sugar and cheese into basically, if you go through the supermarket, you will see they put this stuff in everything. Dextrose, cane sugar. Why are we putting cane sugar in tomato sauce that goes into your pasta?
Right.
If you were going to make a natural recipe, cutting up onions, cutting up tomatoes, you know, putting it in with the olive oil, you're not going to take a tablespoon of sugar and put it in there. Why do they put it in the sauce? So they sell more and you eat more.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Thanks for sharing all that. It's a lot. You know, I had one of my best friends in high school was named Brandon, and he had diabetes, not the kind you develop, but the kind you're born with.
Yeah.
But he was always smoking cigarettes, and I was like, dude, you got to stop smoking cigarettes. This is the worst thing you can be doing. And he always worked in restaurants, and that was how he got his break. And it's kind of like what you were just sharing. And it was, I think, the breathing for sure. That's fascinating. But it was his way to get some time to himself. You know, he didn't have an easy life, and he had to work all the time. And but yeah, there's so much there to. Thanks for sharing all that. And people can do their own research, of course, and make their own choices. But you're pointing people in a good direction to like look at it, look at the ingredients at least, and like look at what you're taking in. And,
if you want to do research and you're listening to this, go on getwildfit.com or look up a man named Eric Edmeades and WildFit. He is it's the main nutrition and food program from Mind Valley. Mind Valley, to give you some more fun data, they have the program 10X, which is one of the best workout programs that I found, and they have WildFit, which is around food, nutrition, and health. Now, Mind Valley has the highest number. They won an award for highest number of 6-packs in a company. So if that gives you any indication to how well this works, and WildFit has a 95% success rate. So if you've been a little bit confused and you've been looking at other different things and you've been looking at, you know, the keto diet and this and this and that, right? Then you'll find WildFit is the truth, and it's the best thing I found. I've healed countless people, helped them release 40, 50 pounds in 30, to 90 days. And it's extraordinary.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's worth noting all these topics we've touched on are all connected. You know, it's easier to tune into a sense of love and becoming from that when you're feeling better physically in your body, right? And easier to develop trust when you're coming from a place of love, right? And, another interesting thing you're bringing up is this idea of nation, of belonging, of our country. And there is a lot of, I've heard some people talk about when the astronauts first went into space, turned around and saw the Earth, and they took that famous photo, and we saw our planet for the first time as it appears from outside. And that visual image of, oh, we're all on this planet together, and the potential for a global identity, which is sometimes maligned by some people because they're afraid of a global government taking over or something like that. But there's just a human life-centered reality that we are all sharing this planet, and to be able to tune into that. And that's part of what this conversation is bringing up for me. Can we hold our belonging to our country a little lightly? We can honor that and appreciate it and have patriotism and all that. And to me, like, the deeper sense is, yeah, we're all life forms on planet Earth here, like sharing this experience together. That's actually deeper than belonging to a particular country or nation state. And I don't know why that feels so controversial to say, but it just feels so obvious too.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, is that part of what the Love Earth is about?
Yeah, so you're referring to the overview effect that astronauts experience when they look at the Earth. And what's beautiful about the overview effect, when you see the Earth as this, green, blue blob in a vast space for the first time, is you realize how fragile it is, and how, and how sweet it is, and then you just see it as one thing, because we are one living, breathing organism. We are all God experiencing herself, and we are that. It doesn't, and the only, I think, how we got conditioned into believing that we are separate is through very harmful media, and showing and the war. I mean, it's just like, how were we even brainwashed into killing each other at mass scale, complete strangers that you've never met before? I mean, that's just, completely insane to me. And I heard a theory about this on Instagram the other day that I thought was really cool. I mean, it's not cool that we're fighting wars, but like a cool perspective, because, the the narrative is around oil and resources and all these other kinds of things. But what they said is that the specific resource that is in Israel, I think specifically, is stargates, actual portals into different worlds and other dimensions, and that's why they're fighting the wars over them, because they're actually the most precious thing in the world. You can't find it here in the world because it's actually a stargate to different dimensions. So that is what I saw the other day of why we're fighting these wars, and I was like, that's quite interesting. That would actually make sense, because I think, money, resources, things like that, it can all be duplicated very easily for these countries, but you can't duplicate a stargate. If there are really these gates going into different worlds, then it makes sense that they're fighting wars over them.
Not familiar with that one, but that's an interesting idea.
Right?
Yeah.
I was like, whoa, this is cool. So yeah, I saved it somewhere. I'll send it to you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's interesting. I don't know about that exactly, but I do know that we're entering into increased conflict, and we're having this presidential election. The next president is going to be a wartime president, and that hasn't been talked about enough. And it's interesting that neither candidate in this country running for president has clearly, intelligently articulated how they're going to handle and respond to the increased conflict in the world, which should be perhaps the most important question, or one of the most important questions.
100%.
So we're in this country, democracy, and our candidate, we have two candidates, major candidates for president. They're not sharing with us what they're actually going to do when they're in office. They are talking about a lot of stuff that is mostly hot air, and we're just in a weird place. Like, the stakes seem so high, and yet the people at the top of the pyramid seem so what's the word? Just abstract and unclear, and you don't know what you're getting into. And so
Heartless.
Yeah, maybe.
Not caring. A lack of care.
Yeah.
I would say is missing.
A lack of care, yeah, and clarity, and
Yeah.
plans, and what's the actual policy that you want to implement, and how are you going to respond in Israel and Russia and North Korea and Iran developing nuclear bombs and threatening to wipe out another country, and like what are we actually going to do about that?
Yeah. Feels like kind of like the first line of command, really, when thinking about leadership. And did you hear about what Bashar said about the election in the U.S.? So we have, two main candidates right now. So we have Trump and we have Kamala Harris. And so what Bashar said is that if Trump gets elected, it's going to lead to Third World War.
Jeez.
And if Kamala gets elected, it's going to lead to open contact with the aliens.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good thing.
Yeah, that sounds like a great thing. And I think for me, just to as a multidimensional healer that works with leaders and goes to the World Economic Forum, and I've connected with a lot of politicians and leaders and CEOs across the the globe. And if I were to choose one, who do I think is most coachable? If I were to come in as an advisor and a supporter to either of them, who do I think is more coachable? And for me, that's Kamala. I think she would be more willing to listen. And then the other piece is that Trump wants to bring through this no abortion policy, which he already started, and Kamala is going to stop that and allow women to get an abortion, which is just like, if that's all I knew about the politics, is one person is actually enabling choice and freedom right? Like Trump talks about like freedom of speech. It's like, okay, great, freedom of speech, but women don't have freedom with their bodies, especially if someone raped you and you don't want to carry that child in your, I mean, that's just ridiculous to me. The fact that we're even having a conversation about that in 2024 and that someone's about to be, potentially elected for president that wants to tell women that they don't have a right to, you know, govern their own bodies, that is just that's a deal breaker for me. It's an absolute fuck no. So,
thank you for saying that. That's clear, and it's a cool way to frame it. I haven't heard that before. That Kamala is more coachable than Trump.
Yes.
And I haven't.
Who would want to coach Trump?
Right, but it seems impossible. Like he doesn't seem like a human who can take in input and change his thinking in a.
There's no willingness.
It's like a. Yeah.
That's what I was saying about trust.
Part of his charisma, perhaps, because he's like so strong. Like I'm going to do it the right way, and there's a certain. That's why people refer to him as authoritarian.
It's tyrannical, just like Hitler was. Hitler was the same way.
But there's a certain comfort and charisma that comes from that, because it's like, oh, they're going to figure it out, and I don't have to.
Exactly. That's what people loved about Hitler. That's why all these people followed him. He was killing people en masses. Why was Hitler successful? I literally did my dissertation on him, so I know a few things about this. Hitler was seen as a charismatic leader, right? We don't see him that way now because we look at what he's done and we just see a villain. But if you were a Nazi in Germany, like my grandfather was, in the 1930s, 40s, etc., you were celebrating him in the same way that people are celebrating Trump now as the heroic leader who is willing to speak and stand up for the nation. Meanwhile, he's killing 7 million people. So similar archetypes. And so that's where, and it's interesting because a lot of people in the conscious community are actually saying, Trump is the real deal. He's gonna, and definitely in a war situation, who do we want? But it's like, who is the one who's actually going to decide that we're going to go to war? Who's the one who's going to actually encourage that and fuel the flame? Whereas I believe the future is feminine. The future is, and that doesn't have anything to do with sex, right? Trump has also the ability to be a feminine leader if he were to tap into his feminine side, which we all have, right? And whereas Kamala is more in her masculine, I would say, as a woman, right, which you have to be, or you had to be in the way that things were being run in the government, et cetera, et cetera. And as we make this shift, but I think what would happen globally to have even just for the mindset of feminine leader, which is nurturing, which is care, which is making sure that the family stays together, everyone's taken care of, right? What that's going to do for our collective psyche, and this is why it's interesting that Bashar is literally saying open contact versus World War III. It makes sense because if I think about nurturing, feminine, birthing this new world that we're all talking about, there's never been a female president. What do you think that's going to do for the mentality of the world? America goes first. America is the one that is leading in the way. And so people are going to be like, oh, America, elected a female president. This is amazing. We've had a female president already ages in Germany. I mean, that's like old news for us, right? But for here, that would actually be an inspirational revolution that people can get behind, right? So that's why I find it quite exciting. So in terms of who would I coach, I would love to coach Kamala and support her with this mission, right? I'm happy to support any leader, but I know that Trump, I have the feeling maybe if we get to know each other for a while, et cetera, there would be more openness. But just in terms of the energetic field of closure that I see around him, difficult case.
Yeah. Interesting. Thanks for sharing that. It feels good to hear and have on the podcast. And
unfiltered. People that are afraid to talk about politics, it's like, why are you afraid to talk about literally the most important thing for your country, the collective decision? We should have open conversations about this all the time. And people shouldn't be, feeling bad about being Democrat or being Republican. Like, it's just, it's like, that's ridiculous. That whole duality is what has created the divide in the first place. There is no Republican, Democrat. This is total BS, right? The only thing that matters is love or fear. You can be Republican or Democratic and be taking decisions from fear. Great. everyone's losing. You can have a democratic government that is loving, or you can have a Republican government that is loving. It's all the same thing. Democrat or Republican, if we're acting from love, we're winning. If we're acting from fear, we're losing. It doesn't matter, where we're going. So that's, if you're thinking about who am I going to vote for, just ask yourself that. Who do I think is going to take decisions from fear? Who do I think is going to take decisions from love? And then you can calculate what's going to be better for your country.
Yeah, make the best choice you can. Yeah, I think there's a fear of people talking about politics in this presidential election because they're like hedging their bets, and they're like, well, I don't want to say this thing against Trump because maybe he's going to get elected, and it's very disturbing to see that on a big level. Like there's a thing, the editor-in-chief of the LA Times resigned because the owner of the newspaper refused to allow them to endorse Kamala Harris, and it's like, that's not a good sign for our country. We should have an independent press, and like to see. So it's like these people like hedging their bets, and yeah, I definitely can't support Trump for many, many reasons. I don't love the other side, but it's good to hear your perspective, and hopefully, yeah, it does seem like the better of the two choices to me at this moment. And I don't know if I would have said that 6 months ago, but that's where I've been forced to come to. Not because I want to support Trump, because I was hopeful there would be a third party candidate that would emerge. That's what I was really wanting, and was
that's why we were supporting the independent party.
You were there for that.
Exactly. And so I believe that this independent movement that is happening in America is incredibly meaningful. The fact that 51% of Americans identify as independent tells us everything.
That's huge.
It's huge. We are already in the majority of that, but what is missing is an independent candidate that can rise up, that has infinite access to resources. Infinite access to resources that is not going to, because what happens is it becomes a game of who has more, who has what, who is more influential, who is more well-connected, etc. And so if we have an independent candidate, someone like Tony Robbins, for example, who has access to infinite resources, who is not only a billionaire himself, but who has written a book interviewing the top 50 to 100 billionaires in the world.
A big book.
Is it? Very smart. Not only are you a billionaire yourself, you're very well connected, in good relationship. You have healed, you have supported a bunch of people across the world. That's someone I think that has, I would say, more impenetrability than Trump does, because that's, I think, something that people like about him. He is such a force, right? And you want that kind of force that's able to drive forward, but we need to be driving in the right direction. Because if we're a bulldozer and then we're just driving down schools and, cutting down all the trees and just hurting the world, instead of going to this plot of land that we were allocated, that has been made room for this destruction or regeneration that's happening consensually, instead of bulldozing all the schools and killing a bunch of people in that. And I think that Tony Robbins is a great example of someone that would have the capacity to be supported within that. And what needs to happen around him is to have the support from very key players in the government that would support an independent party in this type of way. I see that happening. I think it's actually inevitable. There's so much destruction that the political world of the US has already brought with itself, where people are saying exactly what you're saying. I had no choice. Because we're not giving them the choice. We're not actually giving them the choice to choose love. So if we can do that in future, and I believe that will happen, that's going to be really fun. That's going to be fun for America, because I believe that America is one of the most joyous, loving, connected, caring, kind countries in the world.
I love hearing that. Yeah.
Very much so. And it deserves to have that reputation from itself, first and foremost, because I've realized that America doesn't believe that about America.
Right. We lost that vision for ourselves, that sense of who we are. Yeah.
I would say in the global population of 8 billion people, and the 300 million people living in America, I would say that within the, 7.7 billion people around the world, there's actually more people around the world that have never even been to America, or, are not Americans, they love all these other people around America, love America more than Americans love themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. I experienced that. We were talking earlier. I lived for about a year in Nepal, and a lot of people I met there, Nepalese people, Tibetan people, Indian people, a lot of them wanted to come and bring their families to America, and they would ask me, and they would, there's like a little bit of a joke, like, "Oh, will you marry me?" Because they want to come here, or "Do you
Yeah.
have a connection? Can you help me?" And I wasn't able to help anyone in that way, but I saw in their eyes and the way they talked about it, yeah, America is this vision of hope and prosperity and freedom and choice and this idea of a better life for them and their families. And then I don't know the reality, like there are people who have moved to this country and then they're not necessarily happier because all the work and all the stuff and all the stress and all the difficulties. But that vision of America that way is a beautiful thing that we people living here, myself included, like we've lost touch with that. And it's good to like speak to that and remember that. And we have so much potential for that. We have so much abundance. We have so much going well for us. I work with someone whose mother was raised and married in this very conservative religious community in rural Pennsylvania, and it was not exactly Quaker, but that kind of a thing. And so for her whole life, she was told by her church and husband who to vote for, and she never worked. And then she has this amazing life story where she divorced her husband, has become more independent as an older woman, and she got a job as a teller at a bank. But he was telling me how she just recently quit her teller job because when she was first working there for some number of years, rural Pennsylvania, you can imagine rural America, everyone's very nice and kind, and it's shifted now where people are becoming more and more rude and angry. And someone came to her work and like showed her a gun he was carrying and arguing with her, and she was like, "I'm quitting this job." And to me, that made me feel so sad because that's just a little microcosm example of our country going in that negative direction, where we used to be so kind and friendly, and now it's like, what's going on? Why would you carry a gun, which is legal, but then why would you show it to someone to try to intimidate them who's just doing their job? And an old lady, like, what is happening in our country? So that's kind of where we're at now.
100%. And, America is this promised land for people overseas. If you go to the Dominican Republic, if you go to Asia, Central South America, all that people want to do there is move to America.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but now what's happened here is because of the media and the fear that's being broadcasted through the news channels and all these things where we're being manipulated and brainwashed. I don't watch any any televised programming brainwashing whatsoever. So I couldn't tell you what all the intricacies are and the little things, but anytime that I'm on a plane or I'm somewhere and I see an ad, it's like this pill, take this, and are you depressed and do you have this? And so we're constantly being told about these problems that we have and what has this fear has spread, and so that's really the disease that has spread, throughout our country. And we are now afraid of other people. We're afraid of strangers, and there's a lack of the community because it's really the community that holds the children, that raises the children. All of us were raised by multiple mothers. We weren't just raised by one mother. We were raised by our friends' mothers as well. And so that community, that heartbeat, that is what we get to reinstall everywhere, nationwide, immediately. And it shouldn't cost money. That shouldn't be because it's like you want to go somewhere, oh, you have to pay for food, you have to pay for this. It's like everything is constantly costing. But this is why this church was so valuable, because people would come and they would have that community place. And so we get to, dinners, playing charades together, doing stand-up comedy, like whatever it is, art, music, poetry, where we come and we gather. And that's what's going to reinvigorate that heartbeat so that everyone has a family again.
Nice. I love that. Well, it's been amazing to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
This is a far-reaching conversation. I'm excited to get it out, and I feel inspired to get it out sooner rather than later before the election and everything. Any last words, anything you want to share with people?
I want to share that it's going to be okay, and that there is hope, that right now we are in a transition point as a humanity, and that there are millions of people currently working on a transition to love and more connection and more benevolence and more abundance for all of us. And so it's going to be okay. I'm sorry for everything that has happened. But we are here now. Love is here now. And there's people that are working on this. And so if you have a lot of negativity in your sphere at the moment, try to look for the strands of positivity and love in your community and actually pull on those a little more deeper, bring them closer to you, and allow the fear and negativity to dissipate and remove yourself actively from it, because it's going to be financially draining, emotionally draining on your health in all ways and forms. So it's going to be okay. Everything is fine. Just connect yourself to more love.
Beautiful. I love that. Such a great message. And thanks for being on the podcast. Thank you.
Yay, thank you. So it is.